and you were not able to address other cases, I wanted to ask you whether or not you were familiar with a few other cases. Sandy Rogers and Scotty Richardson from Aiken, South Carolina. You familiar with that case?
No, sir.
How about Roger Dale Rice from Lauren, South Carolina? You familiar with that case?
No, sir.
Eric Nicholson or Marcus Whitfield from Greenville, South Carolina? You familiar with that case?
No, sir.
Russ Sorrow from Greenville, South Carolina?
No, sir.
Or Kevin Carper from Spartanburg, South Carolina?
No, sir.
Professor, those are just a handful of the more than 340 police officers who were killed in the line of duty in South Carolina. And Kevin Carper's case is most instructive because his partner did CPR on the suspect that killed Kevin, trying to save his life. Let me ask it another way. Are you familiar with the case of Ricky Samuel?
No, sir.
How about Tamika Houston?
No, sir.
How about Nell Lindsay?
No, sir.
Miranda All?
No, sir.
Santiago Rios?
No, sir.
Those are all folks that were the victim of intra-racial homicides in South Carolina. And I hasten to add, there were not protests either with any of those police officer killings or any of the intra-racial killings. And I suspect you agree with me, Professor, that all lives matter. Whether you're killed by a police officer or your next-door neighbor, you're every bit as dead, aren't you?
Yes, sir. I actually, as a former prosecutor and someone who's worked with police officers, have the deepest respect for them.
So do I. And despite that deep respect, Professor, I still maintain the objectivity of prosecuting police officers who engaged in misconduct. We have a process in place if you don't think you can be fair. It's called recusal, which is what some of us did in every single one of our officer-involved shootings. We recused it to another prosecutor so he or she could make that decision. So there is a process in place. You called for a process. There is one. It's called recusal. Do you know, as a former prosecutor, or can you deign what may have been the biggest impediment to our being able to successfully prosecute homicide cases, particularly homicide cases involving victims of color, in my criminal justice jurisdiction? Do you know what the biggest impediment was?
In Massachusetts, one of the biggest impediments is trying to get witnesses to come forward.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. You have a victim of color, and we had trouble getting witnesses to cooperate with law enforcement and prosecutors, which then, as you know, diminishes the quality of that case and your ability to prosecute it, which may result in a lesser plea bargain because you don't have the facts, which may then result in what you said in your opening statement, which is people have a tendency to treat black lives differently than white, when the reality is the case wasn't quite as good. Isn't that a possibility too?
For every prosecutor who's out there, this is a serious problem, and you are correct in pointing that out, sir.
Right, and it wasn't just me pointing it out, Professor. I happen to have a fantastic chief of police when I was the DA. Fantastic man by the name of Tony Fisher, who happened to be an African-American chief of police. And he lamented the exact same thing you and I are talking about, is the loss of life in his community and the refusal of people to cooperate, even in a drive-by shooting of an 8-year-old at a birthday party. A drive-by shooting outdoors where the whole world saw the car drive by. And nobody would cooperate with the prosecution in the murder of an 8-year-old. So I hope that part of this 21st century police strategies conversation that we're having includes getting people to cooperate with law enforcement so you can hold people to the exact same standard regardless of the race of the victim. Because let me tell you what my goal is. My goal is for witnesses to feel comfortable cooperating. But here's my other goal, and I'm out of time, but I'm going to share it with you. I want us to get to the point where we lament the death, the murder of a black female like Nell Lindsay, just as much if it's at the hand of an abusive husband, which it was, as we would if it had been at the hand of a white cop. I'd like to get to the point where we're equally outraged at the loss of life, and I hope we can get there.
Black History Month you find
ridiculous.
why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? Well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
The whole thing, especially the president and Democrats now are talking about income inequality, and that's basically what, you know, when you talk about the richest 85 people on the planet, right?
Yeah.
It's income inequality. Do you think that's, looking at, you know, what's happening in the news now, is that a good idea?
It's a great idea. It is the greatest idea. We have a much more vibrant society when we don't have such a vast chasm between the haves and the have-nots. We need that middle ground that we call the middle class, the people who buy everything, people who use the products that the rich are creating, if they're creating anything other than wealth, right?
Right.
So it's what's happening with the Chinese economy right now. They're changing their whole outlook because they need consumers.
Yeah.
And without a middle class, you're not going to have consumers. You're not going to have it at the level that we normally would have it.
So can I go back to, because I thought what you said was fascinating, because you called it bull when you said people can't, you know, pull themselves up. Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't or
Today?
cannot? Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. Hey, you and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
Yeah. You know, I said, and it's probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have.
So I understand you recently had a birthday. You're 27?
No. You got that on 37.
37.
Yeah.
We have a little
Gee whiz.
surprise for you. Can we get it? There you go.
Oh, no. That's more like it.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you for joining us here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be
We
here.
appreciate
Pleasure
you.
to
So,
talk.
But I do recognize that blue lives matter. Blue lives matter. Black Lives Matter doesn't really care about black lives. It's, as we'll discuss shortly, more of a movement for attention, money, and, like most activism, more money. To achieve these goals, they focus their energies on cases of black men killed by the police. Well, the work of criminologist Dr. Richard Johnson of the University of Toledo explains just how futile this is. And some of this stuff is tough to listen to. Some of this stuff is not pleasant. It's not the kind of thing that you want to discuss over cocktails, but it's important to understand the problem if you're going to fix it, which Black Lives Matter definitely can't. Based on 2012 numbers, it would take 40 years worth of blacks killed by police to equal the total number of blacks murdered by other blacks in a single year. Right. Less than 400 people a year are killed by cops. 61% of them are white men. 32% are black males. Black men are not killed out of proportion when you consider they're much more likely to interact with police. People are killed by police about as often as they're struck by lightning, but I don't see many protests about storms. Black males are 58% of those killed legally by private citizens in self-defense. And you think, aha, we've got you on something. Except 75% of them were killed by other blacks. FBI statistics on murder lay bare the real threat to black lives in America, and that is other blacks. Black men are about 6.5% of the US population, but they commit 52% of all murders. That has dipped to about 40% in recent years. Black men overwhelmingly murder other black people, and white people overwhelmingly murder other white people. So just like abuse and harassment on the internet, this isn't really a racial issue like that isn't really a gendered issue. Looking at overall violent crime, blacks are 27% more likely to attack whites than vice versa, and 8 times more likely to attack Hispanics. This is the shocking number I hope you take away from my visit. 90% of blacks that die of murder die at the hands of other black people, and that's from the FBI homicide report. 90%. We're not here to talk about why this happens, why 74% of black children are raised without fathers per Health and Human Services, and why the government seems intent on continuing a cycle of destruction within the black community. My message is simple. Black lives don't matter to Black Lives Matter. If they did, they'd be confronting these issues instead of ignoring them completely. Criminalize Black Lives Matter. The left does this insane sleight of hand where they try to suggest that not liking Black Lives Matter is the same thing as hating black people. No one is stupid enough to believe that they know that. No, that nobody falls for that, but they keep doing it. Well, that's dumb. And you can accept that there are things that are wrong in the black community that are not the black community's fault. Like, for example, they need better fucking schools. Without believing that a violent movement that throws its toys out the pram and leaves black communities in ruins is the answer to those problems. Black Lives Matter is crossing over. We are entering the black power phase of Black Lives Matter's existence. And it is crossing over into a terrorist organization. It's time to criminalize it.